First of all, Jonas, I want to take this time to thank you so much for coming on the show. Really happy to have you.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us to talk about StakerDAO and all things crypto today.
Yeah, definitely. So I know who you are, but can you talk a little bit about yourself and the work that you do for our listeners?
Sure, thanks. So I'm here talking to you as the founder of a interesting organization called StakerDAO. StakerDAO is a decentralized financial organization that is building a community, and the community is building decentralized financial services products on crypto projects. So the whole concept of a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, as you probably know, has been around in the crypto world for a number of years now. There was a big DAO that was on Ethereum back in the day that kind of kicked off this concept, and most recently, the term has been really becoming very popular in the Ethereum ecosystem with a number of the DeFi products that we're hearing about these days. DAOifying themselves. MakerDAO obviously had been around for quite a while, and now we have Compound that's turned itself into a DAO, and Balancer that's turned itself into a DAO. So the topic of a DAO, and in our case, a StakerDAO, meaning that we're working on the networks that are focused on proof of stake, is a real timely one. So I'm excited to be here and tell you about that and see what kind of questions you guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you just talk, from a sort of very practical user level, who is StakerDAO for, and what can users do with StakerDAO?
Totally. So about 3 years ago this fall, I started, let's see, 2016, I guess it's actually 4 years ago now. My goodness, time flies here.
Really
4 years ago this fall, I sold a previous company that I was working on that had nothing to do with crypto. It was another geeky topic, actually in the artificial intelligence space. And I live out in Silicon Valley, and so I started talking to my friends out here to see what did I miss over the last couple previous years to that was really an important new set of technologies that was emerging. And people started talking to me about the crypto space. And so I started reading white papers, and I saw, I had bought some Bitcoin back in the day, but I wasn't really paying very close attention to it. And then I learned about Ethereum in late 2016, and I realized I was already late to the game then, although in retrospect, not all that
pretty early, yeah.
but it was something that had already, a number of people I knew had already, some people had invested in it, people were building on it. There was an emergence of these ICOs that were starting to happen back then, and I came across one white paper, which was the Tezos blockchain white paper, and I got really excited by what I was reading in that white paper. Not only did I know a couple of the venture capital firms that were had already made early investments in the Tezos project, but the concepts that Arthur Brightman talked about in that white paper were really revolutionary in the crypto space. The notion of moving to a different kind of consensus algorithm. Bitcoin and Ethereum are both on the proof of work consensus algorithm. So they have miners who are out there running nodes and managing the security of the network, and those miners the network gives them rewards, if you will, for doing that mining. They get coins, and those coins can be turned into funds for their operations and for profit. And they also get transaction fees, and that was really cool. But then Arthur and a couple of other people were starting to talk about proof of stake as an alternative to that one, where the actual value that is locked in the network, in the coins themselves, is used as the collateral to run the nodes, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so this proof of stake space was really appealing. Tezos had a number of other really interesting evolutionary concepts. One of the main ones is around how do you actually govern a proof of stake network? Do you do it with a couple of engineers who get to decide how the code changes, or do you do it through some on-chain governance system that gets to have broader participation? And so that was something that was really cool. There were some other features in that white paper that got me excited. And so I kind of went really deep down that Tezos rabbit hole.
Okay.
And I ended up building a community, the first Tezos community, if you will, of discussion forums and, people talking about it, blog posting. I even started doing some of my own podcasting around Tezos back in the day.
Yeah.
And kind of just got to see that community grow from maybe the first 10 or 20 or 30 people up. And by the time kind of a year went by, they did a huge fundraiser, which was really crazy. Nobody in the space had really captured the imagination of the crypto community quite like the Tezos fundraiser did in the summer of 2017, when they raised over, I think, $200+ million in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then kind of they went, had all kinds of interesting challenges with the Tezos Foundation over the course of the next year, but eventually it got to the point where the network launched in the summer of 2018. And by that point in time, I had assembled kind of my engineering crew, and we had built out what is called a baker. And in Tezos parlance, a baker is like the miner in Ethereum. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a generic term that we use in the proof of stake space. It's called a validator. Mm-hmm. And a validator is someone in the ecosystem who is running the software to maintain the blockchain.
Right.
And in Tezos, I think Arthur, being a French guy, he is particularly enamored with his French cuisine, including the bakeries that they have there. And that's where we got the term baker. And so what bakers do is they bake blocks on the Tezos blockchain, and we built the biggest baker, if you will, when the network launched. And so I got more and more into that network. I also started discovering that, hey, there are other proof of stake networks that are emerging as well. Really, really cool ones. Ones like Cosmos had some really interesting capabilities associated with it. You got things like Algorand that came out that have really amazing technologies, and even the Ethereum guys have caught on to this, and they're starting to build the new version of Ethereum on this proof of stake concept, right? Mm-hmm. So when you hear people talk about ETH2, they're talking about basically changing from a proof of work algorithm to a proof of stake algorithm, and so proof of stake became, it's becoming a interesting concept across the crypto space, and yet one that's not really all that well known, because so much of the focus has been on Bitcoin and Ethereum over the last couple of years. And so when we stepped back and looked at the whole space, we started thinking, how do we build products that really tell this proof of stake space efficiently? How do we do it in a way where we can get the broader community aware of things like Tezos and Cosmos and Algorand and these other networks, and they can begin to participate in them, and they can take advantage of some of the real interesting benefits that those networks offer versus the kind of first generation proof of work networks. Right. And that's where StakerDAO came from. Mm-hmm. So we started saying, how do we build something that that everyone can participate in, they can learn about, they can be a decision maker in, much like the concept of proof of stake itself. All of the token holders in a proof of stake network need to participate in that network for it to be successful. And so we thought, hey, this DAO concept is very similar to that. All of the participants in a DAO have to participate in it for it to create value for all of them, right? So we said, let's take that DAO concept, which is really amazing, and let's build one for the proof of stake world, so that we can create products that are based on proof of stake that open up the entry to the proof of stake world to more and more users. And that's essentially what we decided to start building. And we can go more into detail about what specifically we've built.
Yeah, definitely. So is this something, this is kind of a platform that, forgive me if I'm interpreting this the wrong way, but is this sort of a platform that users can build upon in order to, build staking projects on? Or can you talk a little bit more specifically about
Yeah,
that?
totally. So
Yeah.
the one of the main premises of this DAO goes back to kind of the original thing that we talked about, which is governance.
Yes.
How do you manage a community of people who want to build stuff in a effective way, and how do you do it on chain, if you will, so that it's decentralized, so you don't really have one central corporation or one central person that's in charge of everything, right? A lot of the crypto projects have benevolent dictators,
Yes.
if you will, kind of at the head of them, right? Or in some cases, they're anonymous benevolent dictators. In some cases, a small group of generally engineers are responsible for moving a protocol forward. And what we saw less so in the last year or so, but what we saw definitely a couple of years ago was lots of challenges in those centrally controlled protocols to determine how they were going to change. You may remember we had the Bitcoin forks that happened back in the day, and then we had an Ethereum fork related, in fact, to the DAO hack that they had between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic back in the day. So the trick is to build something that gives everybody a say, puts a governance process in place that can run on chain, but also doesn't get stuck, can allow the protocol to move forward. And that was one of the main innovations with Tezos. And we basically decided we were going to steal that innovation and put it into a DAO, right? And so the first thing that that we built with the StakerDAO was a governance model that was very similar to how the Tezos governance model works. And what that means is, if you are fortunate to become a staker token holder, then you get a say in the process. You can do, the most basic thing for governance is electing your representatives. So you can elect the council that gets to vote yes or no on proposals for StakerDAO.
Right.
It's a very basic thing. It's a representative democracy kind of model. And so we have kind of at our core, we launched a governance model, and the governance model said, okay, number one, eventually we're going to distribute these staker tokens to people for a variety of reasons. And if they're a staker token holder, they can come and they can nominate people to be elected to be the council members. They can become a council member themselves. But we need to elect a body of people to make decisions. And then once we have that body of people elected to make decisions, we need to have a process in place where we can submit ideas to them for those ideas to be reviewed, considered, approved, voted up or down, right? You're like, oh, you're recreating government. Basically, that a lot of that's what a lot of crypto is these days, is trying to build decentralized models of things that exist in the world today. And governance is one of the most important foundational things to put in place first, so that you can build cool products, but have the community manage them instead of the dictators.
The benevolent dictators, right, exactly. So you have this staker token, ST, it's a new letter, STKR. And there's also this blend token, BLND. So can you talk about how those two tokens work together in the StakerDAO ecosystem?
Yeah, totally. So the staker token, which you mentioned, that is this governance token that we're talking about here. And because we are focused on the proof of stake space, because I came out of the Tezos ecosystem with my expertise, we decided to build that governance system on top of the Tezos blockchain.
Right.
So almost all the other DeFi projects you hear about today, those are all built on Ethereum. There's a lot of Ethereum love going on these days. It's really awesome. All kinds of cool innovations going on there. We took the slightly different path here, which is building for the long term. We think over time, a number of these proof of stake networks are going to emerge as really important providers of services across the ecosystem. We think Ethereum will as it moves to proof of stake, will also be a really important provider of services to the ecosystem, and I'm sure we'll be doing things on Ethereum. But we built our governance model on Tezos, and like every startup that I've been a part of, I needed to find investors to help us start this organization. And so in a very Silicon Valley way, I went out and talked to venture capital firms and angel investors and people in the crypto space who were excited about this concept, and we raised a round of funding to build StakerDAO. And the rather than just give people traditional equity like you would in a startup, we decided to give them a tokenized version of that equity, and that's what the Staker token is today.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so essentially, the Staker token is a governance token that lets these early investors participate in the network. And these early investors make up the very beginnings of the community, because we want people who are vested in this idea to have a say in how it grows.
Absolutely.
Right? To drive how it grows. And so the process so far has been to have a small community of about 20 or 30 different token holders. And those token holders have appointed that board of directors that we talked about, or the council, if you will.
Right.
And that all happens, all those processes of making decisions about what the community is going to do have been happening on the Tezos blockchain so far.
Okay.
So,
and then there's sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and so if you go to our website, StakerDAO.com, you can go to the governance tab and you'll see it all happening, all this magic happening, where people are submitting proposals, they're discussing those proposals, the governance process is running, the council is voting yes or no on things. And so that all started in January of 2020. We launched that governance model earlier this year. And the first thing that the governance process started talking about was this other token that you were asking about,
right? This blend token.
The blend token. Right now, I'm obligated to share that the blend token is not for sale for U.S. investors.
Okay.
So it's because of the nature of it and the way that we are bringing it to market. Only non-U.S. people can currently purchase the blend token. And that's because we wanted to offer it. I'll go into the details, but we wanted to offer it in a way that we could get broad exposure to institutional investors out there who might want to hold it. And so that required us to do a partnership with CoinList, which I'll talk about. And as a result of that, it's offered to outside of the United States in its initial offering, if you will. And so what the blend token is, it's probably what your next question is here is, it goes back to the original founding concept of StakerDAO. How do we get more people aware of these proof of stake blockchains? Do we get them to participate in these blockchains? But can we do it in a way that doesn't require all of the technical knowledge that you need to really succeed with proof of stake? Proof of stake is it's more complex than Bitcoin or Ethereum, because you don't just hold your token. You actually have to do stuff with your tokens to participate in the network, to get the network to run, to create value for yourself and for everyone, right? And so while, again, with proof of work, Bitcoin and Ethereum, you have a different group of people who are the miners, and they run the nodes on your behalf, and you can, hold your tokens safely while they're running the network. Proof of stake's different. If you hold tokens, you better participate in the network, or you're decreasing the security of the network by not doing that, right? So participating in the network means that you might want to run your own node, or if you don't want to run your own node, which is really complicated, You might need to evaluate who you want to delegate your staking rights to. In the Tezos ecosystem, there's over 400 different delegation services that you could participate in. And figuring out which one you should use. They all have different fees. They have different risk levels. They have different some are a lot higher quality than another one. There's a lot of decision making and potential uncertainty related to making those decisions yourself. And so our thesis was that there's a whole bunch of users out there, a whole bunch of investors out there who would like to have a position in the proof of stake space, but they're probably a little scared of moving into it right now. They, they're not the DeFi, leverage up 100x and go on compound type of person. These are, family offices around the world, institutional investors, high net worth individuals, people who have been looking at the crypto space for a while. They've maybe they have some Bitcoin, maybe they have some Ethereum, and they're wanting to also take a position in some of these more exotic products, but it's not easy for them to do it yet.
Right. So I wonder how you're, you got, I love that you brought up this point that, there are potentially family offices, and people sort of in that world who might be interested in coming into cryptocurrency and coming maybe specifically into the DeFi space, but aren't necessarily wanting to jump into something like compound and leveraging up, as you said. What are you doing anything specifically to reach those people and market this token and this ecosystem to those people?
I think that the awareness is going to come over time.
Okay.
We're building StakerDAO for its community. And I think that, 10 years from now, StakerDAO will still be launching new, interesting products in the crypto space. And our goal is not to try and launch one token and be done, or to walk away from things. We see it as almost as a decentralized asset factory over time, if you will, where the community owns it, the community runs it, the community decides what it's going to build, and they manage the different levers and controls on those products as those products make it out into the market. And so I think this is a 5 to 10 year journey of getting the mainstream financial awareness of what's going on in the crypto space. Right. I think we're still in the beginning of that journey. Despite all the hype that we have in our own little world, all of us who are participating today, I think we're all just early adopters.
Right.
So far. There's the old Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm chart that shows kind of the, it's like a bell-shaped curve that shows the adoption of a new technology, how fast it happens. And we're all still in that very first entry little curve part that's going up, right? The only people who are in crypto today are people who are really very plugged in, savvy about things, pretty geeky,
super nerds,
and are aware. And the rest of the market has yet to discover what's going to happen here. And so I think for us, what we're doing from an awareness perspective is we're telling stories about the proof of stake space. We're getting people excited about this notion that with a single token, this blend token, you essentially are able to buy it and hold it, but you can still participate in the networks that it represents. So essentially by holding a blend token, it's the same as if you were holding some Tezos and some Cosmos and some Algorand, for example. And, when those tokens have advances on their networks, you get to take the benefit of that by just holding that blend token as well. And so, we're marketing awareness about these networks, and we're reaching out to lots of investors and just explaining to them how they can participate both in our token and in the networks themselves, and eventually how they can even come and participate in StakerDAO as a community member too.
Right, and I love how you're taking the long view with this. You know, when you said that you're thinking about this in terms of 5 to 10 years from now, you know, often in this space, like everything is operating, you know, the next 2 months, or the next 6 months, or maybe the next year, or maybe the next 2 years. But kind of beyond that point, everything is very sort of fuzzy, and there's not a lot of thought going into that.
Yeah, I think if you want to keep up with the innovations that are happening in crypto, you know, they're coming fast and furious.
Yeah.
There's always some new project. There's always some new protocol. There's some new DeFi system. And if you're not living in it 24/7 and listening to the podcasts and reading the press releases and looking at the code, then you're probably at a disadvantage compared to the early adopters who are. So we think there's going to need to be this layer of advisory who can help people who want to participate, but don't have the capacity to spend all their waking hours on it. And that level of advisory can either come from a centralized organization that takes a cut of everything, or it can come from the community itself, right? And so that's what we're trying to do with StakerDAO: build a community that can make good decisions about the future of crypto products, and then bring those products to anyone who wants to participate. And if you participate in those products, then you're also going to be able to participate in the community.
Fabulous.
So it's kind of a, you know, it's a virtuous cycle for everyone.
A virtuous cycle rather than a vicious cycle. Very nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit about sort of the current state of the cryptocurrency, the DeFi space specifically. A lot of these governance tokens for various platforms, various DeFi platforms, have been performing very well in terms of price over the last few weeks. And there's been a lot of talk about, you know, how DeFi is a bubble, DeFi is overvalued, and indeed some of these tokens have seen some pretty big market corrections. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, you know, because it's not, at least from my perspective, I don't see a lot of these platforms sort of like pumping themselves. Like it's mostly, if there is hype, it's coming from the outside. So is that something that these platforms need to somehow be aware of? You know, or is this just sort of par for the course?
Yeah, I think that it's been fascinating to watch the explosion of these DeFi platforms over the last 90 days here. We probably have COVID to thank a little bit. A lot of people are sitting at home trying to figure out what should they be involved in, and getting involved in DeFi is pretty cool for some segment of the community here. It does take probably an advanced finance degree and an advanced coding degree to really understand what's going on in some of these platforms, but nevertheless, it's still really fascinating to watch. I would say that, you know, all of these platforms, or many of them, you start with Maker, you know, a better money, right? And then you have, that's their term, you know, and then you have Compound, you know, decentralized lending platform, and Balancer, you know, an automated market maker. These are all concepts that are really important. These are kind of like foundational concepts that are going to be necessary to move crypto forward and to financialize it, if you will. And these are all projects that were launched several years ago. They started building their concepts, and they started building at a time where the notion of a DAO was just really very, very early. None of them started building their platforms with the vision that someday they were going to issue this token, and people were going to pick it up as something that could drive liquidity in these platforms as quickly as it has happened here. So I think it's purely a happenstance that these tokens have taken off the way they have. It wasn't the original intention of the creators of that platform for them to be so volatile so quickly, if you will.
Absolutely.
and so as a result, I'm not surprised that we've seen this tremendous run up, and then we're seeing, lots of volatility, and as you said, a number of these tokens have come down in value recently. I think they have the potential to provide lots of long-term value to the ecosystem. And at the end of the day, I feel like most things in this world are ultimately valued based on some fundamental models like cash flow or like profitability, and eventually all crypto products are going to have to answer to those types of valuations someday. And so this tremendous surge and crazy pricing on these tokens, yeah, it's something to see, but it really is only affecting, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand people. I don't know how many people are actually participating in these things at scale, but it's not a lot of people, and they are the ones who really are kind of the insiders who have a perspective on how these markets are being created and what the underlying code base is, and they're doing it with significant risk. We haven't seen anything crash and burn totally yet, but it's bound to happen on some of these decentralized exchanges as well. So I think it's a mania. I think we'll get over that hump here, and then we'll probably see a much more steady, longer term growth on the platforms that are left at that point in time.
So I want to ask you about this group of 2,000 people that you mentioned. So yeah, there is sort of this phenomena that's happening right now in the DeFi space where the people who are using the platforms are essentially the people that are also either developing them or are somehow closely associated with their development or their funding. How do you think that is this sort of just a question of time, as you said earlier, how do we sort of expand this ecosystem beyond this group of 2,000 people and into the greater cryptocurrency space and eventually into the greater world?
Yeah, I think the question I would have is, what is the business value of some of the features of these platforms? Mm-hmm. And is that serving a new entrant to crypto? Is it serving someone who has a huge bag of tokens that they've been sitting on for years and have a tremendous capital appreciation for their holdings? Is it for someone, like you said, who's kind of the programmer investor who really can understand the code and figure out how to 100x what they're doing through some glitch in the architecture so that they can bounce from application to application, leveraging up and collecting more and more rewards of these governance tokens? Mm-hmm. Those are all very different use cases, right? Mm-hmm. And while these DeFi platforms are imagined for the first two users, some of them are imagined to bring new people into crypto. Some of them are imagined to help people who've been in crypto a long time get value out of the assets that they're holding. Mm-hmm. In reality, a lot of them are behind the scenes being wired together by the third group of users in a way that third group of users can really take advantage of this specific time that we have to accumulate these governance tokens and trade them in a way that is overinflated, right? And so I think that the risk here is not that that's inherently bad. The risk here is just that it is not necessarily the same platforms in the same manner that are going to provide value to the mainstream over time. And I think at StakerDAO we've kind of thought about that ourselves. And the first set of projects that we've been bringing to market here, this blend token and other basket tokens that we might launch in the future, are intentionally kind of anti-hype, if you will. They're not things that you can financialize like a Wi-Fi platform or something like that. It's just a token, It's just something that you can buy and you can hold, and you can participate in the long-term gains of the networks that it represents, right? And that, you know, in all things financial, there's kind of the competition between the people, the Warren Buffetts of the world, who are the buy and hold investors, and the hedge fund guys of the world who want to flip things, you know, and capture, you know, day traders, if you will, right? And so we think that the mainstream that we talked about earlier, when it comes, they're going to be more of the Warren Buffetts, and so we want to build products that support them.
I see. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about this announcement that StakerDAO is making. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So we're really excited about the growth of the StakerDAO ecosystem. We've when we launched the idea, you know, 7-8 months ago, we had a very small community of people. But with our first product out in the market now, with the blend token in the market, we've gotten a lot of attention. A lot of people want to participate and become community members. And so we've started growing our community. And one of the, as I mentioned, when I came to this space, I started in Tezos, and I got really excited and went really deep down the Tezos rabbit hole. And we built our governance model on top of Tezos. But we think that there are other proof of stake networks as well that are going to be really, really valuable over the long term, and are going to have communities that also want to participate in the kinds of things that StakerDAO is doing. And so the announcement that we're excited to talk about is that we have partnered up with folks in a different proof of stake network called the Algorand network. And we're going to, like what we're doing on Tezos and like what we're doing on Ethereum, we're also going to be building interesting products on top of the Algorand network. And so that partnership has kicked off with one of the investor groups that is deeply embedded in the Algorand network, which is called Borderless Capital, has recently become an investor in StakerDAO. And so Borderless is now one of the Staker token holders that we talked about earlier in the discussion here, and they're going to be participating in the governance process. They're going to be submitting ideas on how to build things on top of Algorand, and they will be really actively advocating for bringing DeFi processes to Algorand, like we want to do on other proof of stake networks as well.
Okay, very exciting. So Jonas, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and to hear about all these amazing things that you're doing. Before we go, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about where they might be able to find more information about you or about StakerDAO?
Sure. You know, the web's a great place to find us at StakerDAO.com. You can find out all about our projects there, and you can follow our governance process, which again I think is really fascinating to watch at that site as well. If you're interested in the blend token, you can go to blendtoken.com to learn more about it there, and on both Twitter and Telegram, you can find us at StakerDAO. So we'd love to talk with everybody and get everyone involved in the community.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonas, for your time. Pleasure to speak with you.
Okay, thanks a lot for your time.